Numbers jumped up quick. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Good morning to you.
Thank you. I'm watching these numbers and they're just like going super fast. So I feel some eagerness in getting started today.
I do. And before we get started, so I don't forget, one, so happy to have you here, Lauren. Don't we all miss her when she's not here? Sadie does an awesome job, but we're so happy to have you back. And Lauren and I were talking before the show, and she mentioned to bring this up. Empress, that you guys, many of you watched last week, sent me an email after she was so grateful that she said, I think 11 people purchased her products during the show, and she was almost in tears. She told me she was so grateful for that. So just shout out to the audience. You guys are such great support of the show, support of all the audience and the guests that comes on. And that is just fantastic. So I wanted to mention that. Thank you for telling me to mention that, Lauren. I wouldn't have thought of it. And that's a very good point to bring up. So with that, Lauren, I'll let you get started. It's so glad to have you back and going at it.
Here we go. Let's jump into it. I'm so sad I missed last week, but I am excited to be back with my family here, our frequent flyers, as well as those of you who are new to the show. Let me stop talking so I can get us started. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. I am with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, our services are at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of all of our fees. For the Los Angeles Regional Network, which is the network that I represent, or that we represent actually, because Lori works with several of the networks, so we're lucky there. We have several locations, physical locations throughout the several counties, actually. I was going to say the county, but there are several counties. We service the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you'll see those locations that I mentioned on the map in front of you. We have locations in Camarillo, Santa Clarita, Pasadena, all the way out to Laverne, throughout Los Angeles, the South Bay, down into Long Beach. Now, I mentioned that Lori was part of the regional network as well. Here's why that's special to us. As the SBDC, we offer no-cost business advising as well as no-cost virtual trainings or webinars. When it comes to the business advising, that's your opportunity to sit one-on-one with one of our business experts. And so we have a ton of experts from various fields. And I'm talking about marketing, communications. If you are looking to just start your business, we have someone who can assist you with creating a business plan, doing market research. If you are an established business, and maybe even looking to grow your business, we have a special team called the ACT team, the Access to Capital team. We also have a guru of numbers, Miss Lori Williams, who you have the opportunity of sitting with to get your numbers in order. If you're anything like me and numbers scare you, Lori literally takes away all the fear. She makes you fearless and gets you to no longer be afraid of those numbers, but embrace those numbers and watch them improve. And she's a straight shooter, which I love. We also offer those virtual trainings, and those are going to be comprehensive workshops that assist you in beginning your business, adapting, and are growing. So finally, please be sure to get in contact with us. Go ahead and, sit with us during the show, but be sure that you guys actually reach out to us and work with us. We'd love to get started with you. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232, or online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us and you're outside of our service area, which means you are outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, or Ventura counties, please be sure to go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. All right, let's stop the screen share. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping, guys. Can we be sure that we put all questions into the Q&A? Again, questions in the Q&A. And then for those of you who are brave enough, go ahead and join our party that occurs in the chat. You don't have to be brave. Just jump in there and you can interact with us. There are listeners in here, I'm sorry, viewers like yourself, as well as any kind of comments that you'd want to share related to the topic at hand. Now, we have an extremely exciting guest today, and I know Lori has some information she wants to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it back over to you, Lori. Good morning again.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And one of the part I love about the show is the chat, the party, as we call it, because I just feel like it is a support for each of the people in there. I don't get to read much of it because too much is going on, but I see all the support and the wonderful comments. And I think that is one of the things that really makes the show special. And it was created by you guys, not by me, not by Lauren, by you guys. So I thank you for that. Okay, so I always tell you what webinars I'm coming up. May, I'm kind of repeating the same things. I'll have the legal webinar and stuff, but April, I'm finishing off with the financial literacy series. I know these are kind of something I say all the time, but I tell people, go to the show if you want to know where my webinars, and Lauren will get the link. So I use this as kind of the update platform. I keep saying I'm going to create some new webinars, but I got so much going on with the webinars I have. It's like hard to create some new ones, but someday you'll maybe see some new ones on there. Okay, upcoming shows. Next week, we got Ted Milner coming on from Executive Temps, and it's a company that focuses specifically on the entertainment industry, an industry that I've kind of gone in and out in different times and don't know a whole lot. And I know that they do use a lot of temporary staffing, etc. But I'm very interested to have a conversation with Ted, learn about the company, how he started it, and also what's going on with the amount of requirement for different staffing requirements given what's going on in the economy, as well as AB5. I got a ton of questions to ask him. And then on April 24th, Elia Harris is coming on, and I've just put her down as an inspirational speaker and podcaster, which really is kind of an understatement to her personality. I don't know her well. I'm really looking forward to get to know her as well as you guys, but she's got one of these energies and personalities that is just bigger than life. My first introduction to her, within the first 3 sentences, she had everybody in awe. She really is a star type person, being a speaker with her podcast and everything that's going on. And you're just going to love her. She's very inspirational and very unique. So I can only imagine the questions I'm going to be able to ask her. Very excited about that as well. Okay, I figured I would continue with a tax theme because it is tax season. And as you guys know, I always bring up things that are being asked more than once, repeatedly throughout the weeks from the clients, because I know if one person has it on their mind, probably everybody else has it on their mind. So I'm going to talk today about tax receipts. Those pieces of paper, you go to the gas store, you order some office supplies. I'm getting a lot of questions about how long do I have to keep those? And I'm also getting those questions of, do I really need to keep them? And everything in between, from can I scan them in versus having all these pieces of paper, etc. So Lauren is going to put this information into the chat for you to copy and paste if you need it, because it's just too lengthy for me to properly put it on the screen. But let me start by explaining. So basically, for most people, it's 3 years. You need to keep your tax returns and all your receipts, which I'll get into the receipts in a second, for 3 years unless certain situations apply to you. Now, if you have employees, then you have to keep it 4 years, okay? 4 years. And these are all dated from the day that the tax becomes due or is paid, whichever is later, okay? So I bolded the ones that are specific to most people. But then there is all these other exemptions, right? So for example, if you claim a loss from a worthless security or a bad debt deduction, it's 7 years, right? And if you do not report income that you should report, and it's more than 25% of the gross income shown on the return, it's 6 years. If you do not file a return, it's indefinitely. And if you file a fraudulent return, it's indefinitely. Okay, I'm sorry. I know it's being recorded, but I have to laugh on the IRS. Okay, if you're going to file a fraudulent return, at least keep your receipts that are fraudulent. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. I have to sometimes just laugh at the IRS rulings. But anyway, that is the specifics. So when people say, how long do I keep it? You can see that it depends on lots of different situations. Now, I had, and I would never have thought of asking or stating this, but I had somebody that I was speaking to, and they thought, and they're new to filing taxes for their business, so they didn't understand this. And they believed that they had to take all the receipts, like the gas receipt, the office supply receipt, and take that to their tax preparer. No, you do not. You keep those, and those are just in the case of an audit, okay? So these individual receipts that show, and what they really need to show is they show that, okay, I paid for something and this is what I paid for. Those individual receipts you hold on to. The tax preparer just wants the totals, the QuickBooks, the spreadsheets, the bank statements. That's something that they use as the bank statement as well. And so that's the type of documents that the tax preparer wants. The receipts that you are keeping are the receipts to back up what it was that you purchased, right? And so Cindy asked a question, can I use the bank statements that show the transaction, or is actually to be the actual receipt? Well, one of the things, and the way to look at this, because you can go down a rabbit hole and you can ask a ton of questions, and the IRS doesn't say, well, a receipt from this or a receipt from that. They say basically keep all receipts. So let's look at it from kind of a different view. Let's say if we were unfortunately be audited, and if we were audited and the IRS wanted to know, what do they want to know? They want to know, what did you spend it on, and did you actually spend it, right? So if you have an invoice but you don't have a canceled check, that's where the bank statement comes in to show you paid the invoice. Well, then you don't have the way to prove that you bought this and you did pay for it. If you have a computer and you bought it from Macintosh and you got a receipt, or you got a bank statement, you can see that it's going to say that you purchased it. So you've got to be able to show that you purchased it. Now, in practical, everyday life, does everybody keep every single receipt? No, I got to say, because I tell you reality. I tell you what the law says and what the legal things and what reality is. If people are like, do I have to, if I go to the office supply and get a toner, do I have to make sure I keep the toner, or can I show that I bought an office supply? Well, technically, yes, you have to keep the toner, but you got to look at it. What are the chances that you're going to get audited by IRS and they're going to want to go, did you really pay for that toner? So, as a general practice, it's good to keep the receipts, but don't lose sleep over it. And that's what I'm trying to say. I have seen people get like crazy if they can't find the receipt for the toner because they're so afraid of the IRS, which, guys, I get. But what I'm just trying to say is don't get yourself so worked up where you're actually going crazy on it, okay? And what I do like to do, because I don't like paper, is I scan the receipts. And where you really want to be very cautious, I would say, is keep receipts for large ticketed items or items that you would be claiming like a depreciation or what's called Section 179 that goes on certain tax returns over periods of time. For example, I bought a new Macintosh computer last year, which I bought a very expensive one, so it was depreciated under Section 179, and that's going to appear on the tax returns for some years. So of course, I'm going to want to keep a receipt that I bought this from, Apple, and it's a Macintosh, and this is how much it cost. But in actuality, when you think about it, I'm not going to let that receipt go anyway, because I need it in case I need to ever, have an issue with my computer. So in just common knowledge and common behavior, it just always so happens that when you have a receipt that you really definitely need to keep to validate a certain higher expense, you're keeping it anyway. So Kim, yes, receipts do fade and disappear. Scanning a receipt is always a safe thing. And like I said, keep it in the back of your mind that you need to keep this, but don't go absolutely crazy about doing so. What I think is such importance is making sure that the information that you provide to your tax preparer is correct, because a lot of times people just hand over their QuickBooks account. They're not checking things. They're not seeing if it's accurate. They're not checking the balance sheet. And as much as I would like to say that tax preparers do check that, you have to understand the word compiled reports. Compiled reports are the type of tax returns that are done for pretty much all small companies versus reviewed or audited larger companies, large bank loans, et cetera. You have to have reviewed or audited. So most of your tax returns are compiled. In that, the tax preparer is responsible for asking certain questions, but really the information that you give to the tax preparer input, which is put on your tax return, is your responsibility. So they're not auditing and checking all the data. That is your responsibility. And so therefore, sometimes tax preparers will pick up and go, hey, could your grant have been in your income and you're really paying taxes on, or is this correct here? But a lot of times they're just taking your numbers, sticking them in some software. And so you have to be the one that does the final auditing of the returns. Okay, so that's enough about tax. As soon as April is done, I'm going to stop the tax talk because it's not as fun as other things. I'm going to go back to talking about other things that are more fun. But for right now, a lot of questions, a lot of situations with tax. So I'm wanting to bring up as much as I can. And I can't remember, I might have given, Lauren, if I gave you another link to the IRS free tax services, put that in there. I can't remember if I did it for this week or saved it for next week, but either way, I'll catch up with it. So if I did give it to you, put it in chat as well so they have it. Okay, on to something fun. Absolutely. So today we're going to learn about STEMS. STEMS is a Black woman-owned LA-based catering and private chefing company. The founder, Kaiy Smith-Biesman, is also the founder of Business BoostHER, a community dedicated to mentoring women in the hospitality industry. Kay holds a degree in entrepreneurship and marketing from Chapman University. She has always aimed to build a business that not only paves the way for success, but also contributes positively to her community. Kay, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here today. Oh, you're on
Thank
mute.
you so much for
There you go.
having me.
There,
Figured out the mute button.
I know, and with Zoom always automatically mutes everybody, and it constantly is muting you, so you can kind of not know you're being muted. So first of all, let's go backwards. I know you got an entrepreneurship and marketing degree from Chapman. So did that bring you an interest in the hospitality industry, or where did this interest come from? I want to start there because that usually people have really interesting stories on why they became interested in what they're doing.
So actually my mom and dad met in the restaurant industry. And so it's been something that's been a part of my life forever. And that's actually not what I wanted to do at all. I wanted to be an attorney and work in labor and employment law. So I got into law school and like all of that. My husband asked me like, it was like our third date or something. And he was like, why do you want to be an attorney? And I was like, I actually don't like to read very much. And I just want to drink wine and eat cheese all day. And he was like, so figure it out, like do that. And I remember going back to my mom and being like, yeah, so I don't think I want to go to law school. And she's like, what? Like, this is crazy. So, yeah, that's kind of like the beginning of my like journey as far as like realizing that I didn't want to be an attorney. I didn't want to kind of sit in an office all day. It was not fun for me. At that time I'd worked in a law firm, and every time the partners had meetings, I would actually like go to Trader Joe's and put together their cheese boards. And I was like, I wonder if I could like make this a job, you know? And I think like at that time when you're younger, it's like probably not. But and there was a lot of pivoting before I got to actually opening my catering company. But it was a great way to kind of start and figure out like what I wanted to do and not what other people thought I would be good at. So that was definitely interesting. But like seeing my mom and my dad work in the restaurant, I'm like, they spend so much time there. I know like my childhood was sitting in offices when my mom, she did the books for a lot of big restaurants, and my dad was the head chef at the Ritz-Carlton growing up. So, very different, like dynamic than owning a catering company.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. You know, Kay, it's so interesting, and I'm so glad you shared that part. You know, to everybody in the audience, and it doesn't matter what age you are right now, we can all relate to that beginning times in our life when we're trying to figure out, and how many people have gone to college for one thing and then decided to do something else. You know, it made me think of my own story. I grew up, as everybody that knows that watches the show, in the country, podunk country, right? And my sister, who's like 13 years older than me, she went off to college and became a lab technician doing blood work, right? Now, that is not anything I had ever wanted or is my personality, right? But I was kind of told by my family, well, there's, you know, because we were in the country, I wasn't exposed to anything. You could either stay and work on a farm or go be a lab tech. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be a lab tech, right? So to those, in addition to all the other degrees I got that I never mentioned, I have an applied associate in science and biology and research, because I went down to, you know, 2-year school, worked in a lab tech, and I was like, oh my friggin' God, I hate blood and I don't even like being around sick people. And so I had my first, you know, crisis, my identity crisis at that age. So I think it's interesting that you had that same experience. You figured it out, you went down the pathway, but you're going down the pathway a little bit different. You're doing it your way. Because, like you said, the restaurant industry, watching your mom and dad, you were like, oh, not that, the catering. So tell us, take us on this. So you identify that you want to go somewhere within this industry, and catering may be it. And you mentioned you pivot, which I get a feeling we're going to get a story like this. So tell us the story.
yeah. So when I, about 8 years ago, I got pregnant, and I was working actually in construction as a project manager at that time. So after I left the law firm, I actually went into construction because my grandpa was an electrician. My next door neighbor owned a contracting company. So it was like, I just kind of grew up around it and was like, well, I can be an admin assistant until like I figure out what I want to do. And so I worked at a new construction firm, and it was interesting to say the least, but one of the things is there's always a sense of urgency. And after I had my son, I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be the mom that I want to be and also work the amount of hours that I'm currently working. And so the idea of like wine came up again with me and my husband, and my mother-in-law was like, I know this person who does like in-home wine tastings. You should do that. So I actually started doing in-home wine tastings at the time,
Okay.
and got my sommelier cert, and really started to focus on the wine industry. And when COVID happened, I had just moved back to California. My husband's in the military, so we moved around all the time.
Okay.
I just moved back to California. My mom, who had worked in the food industry, and my grandma, who did floral, I was like, we should start a company together. And that's where stems actually came from, because in floral, you have stems, in wine, you
Stems.
have stems, and then
Okay.
you have herbs, you have stems from herbs. And so it was March 2020, and I was like, we should start a company where we teach people like how to be like the best home entertainers. I do wine, you do food, and grandma does floral. So we launched on the 3rd of 2020, and then we were going to plan on doing in-home like classes, and then everything changed. And so my grandma and my mom were like, we'll just take a few weeks off. And I was like, no, we just started. We can't take a few weeks off. So I started doing online wine tastings. And one of the things that I have a huge specialty in is pairings. And so they asked me to, like, people started asking me, is there any way that you can also drop off cheese boxes and we'll do it with like the wine tasting? And so that's how stems actually came to be, was from like, it was on a whim. I was leading wine tastings, dropping off the wine and dropping off the cheese boxes. And then it just grew. And that's how stems came to be. As we
Fascinating.
know it
Kate,
now.
this is like
Yeah.
a true entrepreneurial. Let me just let me just float wherever I am and then start swimming and then suddenly find a new avenue to pursue. So pairing, I'm assuming, is the wine to the cheese. And so you were
Yeah.
pairing and you were bringing. So really what's so fascinating, what would have been a brick wall for most was an opportunity, because I'm assuming you got requests because suddenly they were having this opportunity to have something that felt entertaining and felt, kind of a little bit luxurious and engaged while we're stuck in our home. So you probably got a lot of demands given what you were offering that you would have never came up with otherwise. That is just fascinating.
Yeah. And like for me, I've always been like, I'm not the food person. I don't want to do that. Like, I did beat my dad in a guacamole contest when I was 7. So I used to joke around, like, we know who the real chef is. It's me, not you. But I think for me, it wasn't something that I was planning on doing. And I didn't plan on doing it without my mom or my grandma. But for them, they were like, we're on vacation for a few months. They've worked their whole life. And so um COVID was like a really good time for them to like hibernate and like find out like who they were, what they like to do, not have to worry about their kids or their grandkids all the time. And so it was really easy for me to scale too, because I was doing a lot of this stuff from home. We got into a commercial kitchen um probably like a year in. And
Yeah.
then we just started to kind of scale from there. And then as things started to open up again, people started to ask for other catering things. So we added like sandwiches to like our portfolio in like 2022, and they were like a huge hit. And so then we just kind of started adding smaller things and smaller things. And then the company has just grown to what it is today.
Wow.
Which we're opening our storefront in Old Town, hopefully this summer, which we're learning about that stuff too. And we have a prep kitchen in LA currently that we do all of our catering out of.
Okay, so I got so much I got to unpack because I can tell, I know my audience. I know the things that they're going to want to know. So we're going to back up. This is too fascinating. I'm all excited here. So I'm going to back up quite a bit. From your online, how did you market and advertise to get people to know about you? So anything that is one of the biggest things is people getting exposure. I'm just going to call it just exposure out there. So can you tell us any tricks of the trade you learned while doing that?
So for catering and what we did, we knew that it was super local. And so what I did was I leaned into Facebook and started finding our local groups, finding other businesses, other women, other minorities in the space, and kind of asking them, what are you guys doing for your employees right now while all of this, craziness is happening? Why don't you do a wine tasting? Why don't you do a cheese and charcuterie class? And so I started to reach out that way. And then one of my friends was like, are you on Instagram? And I was like, no, I hate Instagram. Like, I don't want to even try. And she was like, no, try it. And that was right when like Reels started happening. And so we started to really focus on like, I'm making a box anyways, a cheese box anyways. I might as well just record it. And so I started recording it, started talking a lot to other people in this industry who were starting to like grow their businesses. The mistakes that I made were like super important, telling people all the mistakes that I made, all of the ways that, learning how to figure out what your value is. That's like one of the hardest things, talking a lot about pricing and understanding your cost and all of that. And so since I have a business and an entrepreneurship degree, I started to really communicate that to my audience. And our Instagram blew up from there. And so a lot of our leads started coming through Instagram. And then as we were learning, we learned that like having a Google profile is like another incredible source. So we added Google. And I think one of the most important things that I tell people is it's great to have all of these things, but you don't need to do all of the things at one time. The
Yeah.
importance is to scale them and to really make sure that you're focusing on certain aspects. And one of the things that we focus on for our clients is to give them a stress-free experience. But in doing that, one of the things that I realized is in order to give our clients a stress-free experience, not only did we have to do catering, but we had to give them the whole experience. So we started to meet other vendors that were doing floral or balloons or photo booths and things like that. And so we started to connect them with other people that actually did those things. And so we became like a full, like one-stop shop for home entertaining. And that was kind of the thing that we leaned into. So people would come to us for not only catering, but they wanted to know who are all of the other people that we work with, like who is our preferred vendor list. And that really helped us to scale too, because what we found is by collaborating, not only was I reaching my audience, but I was reaching the audience of other vendors that had similar price point items to us. And so we have this like little community now of like incredible vendors that do a lot of bespoke, like entertaining things. And we're able to offer them to our clients to give them a really great experience.
This is fascinating, helpful, and very interesting information you're sharing, Kay. And what I love about it is it reminds me of something I say a lot, and that's own your local community first. Now, I'm not saying this works for all companies, but I think too many times companies get pushed into doing this like global marketing campaign to reach so far outside their own marketplace. And I think, and I say this a lot, where small companies are really succeeding and where they can benefit is when they're collaborating with each other, creating these communities, and they can be big and powerful because together they're uniting and, like you said, creating a full catering list. So I love this local community approach. Now, here's another thing you said, and I get asked this so many times that I'd love to get some information that you experienced going to a commercial kitchen. That step, first, people don't know why they have to and when they have to. And then when they have to, it's very challenging. And I know enough, because I've gotten involved with enough companies, that the availability of commercial kitchens has changed a lot in the last couple of years, and they're more flexible. So let's just tell us anything that we can learn from your experience about commercial kitchens, the decision, the cost, and the good, bad, and ugly, if you will.
I have like a lot of opinions on this.
So I knew you did. Please share.
When it comes to commercial kitchens, I think that they're very important in a lot of aspects. And one, in California, they're necessary. You don't really have the option. Certain areas do have something called MICO, which allows you to have a micro enterprise home kitchen operation within your home. We don't have it in LA County. It's something that they're working on. I think it'll be very valuable, and it'll help with the barrier to entry, because the barrier to entry in restaurants or in the food industry is extremely high. And cheese and charcuterie is something that you just can't do in your home. There's baking, which you can do in your home. There's a lot of things that you can do to get a cottage license, but not actual catering currently in LA County. And I think the first kitchen that we ever had was a bakery that actually didn't use their kitchen space, and so they were able to lease it out hourly. And that was in Pasadena, and it was super convenient for us. We were able to, I have a small event and I need to rent it for 10 hours here. And at that time it was about, I want to say $35 an hour, which is not inexpensive when you start to like add up all of the things. But there's definitely ways to really help yourself with kind of mitigating the cost. And one of the things that we learned was on our kitchen days, my team was stacked. So I paid $35, whether it was just me in the kitchen or whether there was 10 people in the kitchen. And so we learned how to make the most of our space. So prep days, we would go in, everybody would go in at a certain amount of time. There would be 5 of us, and we would just hammer out a bunch of stuff, prep it, put it in the fridge. And then if we had 1 or 2 boards, I could usually hammer them out in like 15 to 20 minutes. So it's easy for me to sneak in, hammer out a board, put it in the refrigerator, and call it a day. Now the kitchen that we moved into, because we have grown and we needed our own space, it was about $10,000 down payment to get in, right? And most people don't have that kind of money, especially in this industry. And this is like where a lot of the feelings come in, where I'm like, it is extremely hard for businesses to survive in this industry. We already have low margins, and then we have a really, really high cost. But for smaller businesses, the great thing about our kitchen is we're able to lease out our kitchen to another vendor. So when we're not working in our kitchen, what we do is we lease it out to another vendor who's a smaller vendor. And because we're at a place that we are, myself, and I know a lot of other people do this, I kind of do a pay what you can afford and let me help you figure out how to scale it, because eventually we're going to probably scale out of here and we want.
Oops, I think we lost Kay for a minute. I'm sure she'll come back. So while I'm still here, and I think I'm still here, right, Lauren? I'm still here.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay. I just want to make sure, it's so funny. You think somebody else froze, but you go, is it me? So while Kay's coming back, I have to say to the audience, because I'm sitting here, she is amazing. She knows what she is doing and has all these experiences. So, if she freezes and doesn't come back, we're getting her back on. But, I have heard so many people struggle with the commercial kitchen. And I've heard a lot of people that do create churches that have kitchens and different places that have kitchens and rent it out when they're not using it. I know she'll come back in a second. And so the commercial kitchen is so struggle. And I know the cottage industry, that is challenging because there's very few things that you can fit within the cottage industry to be able to do it. No worry, Kay, I covered it until you came back. I'm just saying how amazing you are on all this information. So I'm going to let you continue, but I have to say, we got to note that everybody can understand that Kay is organized. Okay, I have this picture of everybody coming in the kitchen, just like the military setup that you're experiencing with moving around with your husband. Okay, now line up, do this, but you are organized. So please take it from where you were and keep going.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is just to really utilize your space and your time and your resources. And I think connecting with other people in this industry who also understand how hard it is. And they know other people. And so when you're starting this, it's finding maybe that bakery that starts at like 2 a.m. in the morning and they're finished with their kitchen by 12. And can I rent out their kitchen? Pasadena and LA have different rules though. So you have to be very careful about that. Pasadena, they allow shared kitchens. LA County, they do not allow shared kitchens. So legally, can you get your own licensing? How does that look with liability? How are you? All of those things you have to really figure out. But the other thing that I want to remind people is the health department is your friend. Call them, ask them the questions. Make sure that you clearly understand what it is that you need and what you don't need in order to operate your business. Because in the long run, that's going to be one of the most important things, and it's going to keep you from having to pay fines or have the wrong licensing or all of that. And there's a lot of different ones depending on where you're located.
I'm glad you said that because I have had to call them for questions on cottage industry with clients that have asked questions because it's just you don't know, right? And they answer the phones and they answer the questions. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I love it. I can see that you're just always looking around you and saying, who or what or where in my community can I find resources or be a resource, and creating this strong platform with all of these combinations. So I just love that. Okay, now there's another word that you said, and many people don't even know what this means. One of our guests brought it up the last couple sessions ago, and we didn't really have a time to delve into it. Prop kitchens. I think it's prop kitchen you said, or prop
Ghost
Ghost
kitchen.
is what I thought it was ghost, and I thought you heard prop, and I was always heard a ghost. Okay, so it was ghost. I was gonna say is prop another word for ghost. Okay, so ghost kitchens are something that many people are not aware of, and I just became aware of them a couple years ago. And like I said, the last guest that we had on that was talking about a ghost kitchen, we couldn't really get into it because there was so much other stuff. So tell us, what is a ghost kitchen? Why would I use it, and how would it benefit me?
So there's actually a few different types of kitchens. So you have a ghost kitchen. A ghost kitchen is basically where you go, it doesn't have your name on it. That's why it's called a ghost kitchen, right? You're using somebody else's space to produce your items.
Oh, I think we lost Kay again. She'll probably be back in a second. So oh, there she is. I think she's coming back. Uh, it's so funny. It just airwaves. We can never count on airwaves, can we? So let me do my tap dance right here and fill in the blank. So what I know about the ghost kitchens is, she's going to know far more than I do, is that you are either producing your product out with your name on it or a private label name on it. But I do know there is so many different avenues of it. So I'm going to wait till Kay comes back on to talk about this specifically, because I am interested. And so as soon as she comes back, I'll have her finish with the ghost kitchen. But I think the thing you can see is that there's a whole lot that you have to be aware of. And so a lot of times when you're selling things at a farmer's market and you're selling food, you may not even be aware that there is a criteria you have to abide by. And so that's one of the things, Lauren, that I learned on, from some of the clients. They got these nasty letters. They thought, okay, I didn't really think that attributed to me because I'm just selling at a farmer's market. But, like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but it goes into if you're using peanuts, if you're doing this, if you're selling this, there's a whole different set of requirements. And so becoming, like she said, a friend with your health department, your local health department. And then I definitely learned that, well, this is true in LA, but this is not true in Pasadena, and this is true over here. And the other thing I'd like to say about the legal requirements for the food as well as beverage industry is that, because I would have clients ask it and I would think I knew the answer because I just looked it up, I'd look it up and it changed. So you really do have to constantly go on and see what happened, especially because of COVID. I lose track of time and I can never remember years, but I think it was like 3-4 years ago, they changed the rule on the cottage industry. I used to know how many years ago. I swear COVID has thrown me off. I'm like, I always like, did that rule come before COVID or after? So it had to be before. Maybe it was even 10 years. And once they did that, they tried to open it up to have more people be able to make some products at home and sell them at the farmer's market. But there's still a whole bunch of rules within that. And, while I'm, kind of talking about everything food oriented while I'm waiting for Kay to come back on, one of the things that is very bizarre that I had to find out from a client asking is, would you believe that the difference is whether or not you charge sales tax on a product, and it could be whether it's served hot or cold? I know.
Really?
I know, Lord. Okay. I would have never believed this, right? So I had a client that was a food truck, right? And like I said, I just know all this because I have so many clients in so many industries and been around. So I was like, they said, well, do we charge sales tax on this? And I know some food is and some food not, depending on whether it's processed and, all this type of stuff, right? Like a grocery store, you do pay tax on some food items, but not others, right? When you get your sales tax and stuff, you pay tax on some. Well, I looked up and it had this whole thing. And it's like, if you were, I'm trying to remember from, some time ago, so I may get this a little bit wrong, but if you sell this drink and this drink is sold cold in to go, it's got sales tax, but if it's sold in, it's not. And so there is a complete brochure that you can download from the Franchise Tax Board that talks about mobile trucks, talks about catering, and it gives you an entire list of what may or may not have sales tax added on. So that's another topic to be conscious of if you're involved in this, to go to the Franchise Tax Board and not just accept that sales tax is or is not added. Actually get their pamphlet, and it's about 40 pages long, but it goes through a listing of all the foods. And if anybody throws in the chat, like if anybody wants to know that, just throw it in the chat and I'll pull it up and make sure you guys have it next time. There's also, just as a side note on sales tax, there's sales tax on digital products and when they're taxed and when there's not, because that has a whole different rule.
No idea, especially the hot and cold. Who would have thought?
I know. And while we're talking about the franchise sales tax and sales tax, you really have to be conscious of not making an assumption. I'm going to make a side note while we're here waiting. So in California, we all know that products have sales tax. We're very familiar with that. But what a lot of people don't understand is that a service could also have a sales tax added on it.
Okay.
And so they have this thing called fabrication. If the service is part of the fabrication, they say, I'll explain what I mean, that's their language, then they add tax on it. So for example, if you go out and you fix somebody's barbecue, that's like a repair, it's a service, it's not taxable. But in fixing the barbecue, if you improve it and make it better, you have added value, it's taxable. Very bizarre. And so where I first came upon this is a company I was a CFO for, a $60 million company. They had already gotten audited when I got there. But what happened is they were installing furniture. That's a service. You deliver and install. Most people delivery and installation, our services, you don't charge sales tax.
Sure.
But when they delivered the product, the furniture, they didn't leave it right outside the door. They actually took it into the place and put the desk where the desk was, and they put cubicles together. The
Okay.
franchise tax board identified that as part of the fabrication, and they got fined and had to pay a lot of sales tax back that they couldn't go to their customer because of the fact that they considered this fabrication and they should have charged sales tax.
No way.
Yeah, and then the really interesting one, because like I said, once again, anytime everybody gets a nasty letter from the government, it usually comes to me through the SBDC. What's this letter about? So there was a company that was creating digital products that were patterns for the sewing industry. So like I'll create a pattern and I'll sell it to you digitally, and I'll email it digitally. That's not a word, digitally. Yeah, I just made it up. But I'll email you a digital copy of this pattern, right? So digital products don't have sales tax. But what they did is they said, well, you know what, we're going to mail one shirt so we can at least see what a shirt would look like. Well, that's a product. And they
Sales
didn't
tax.
charge sales tax, and they got fined on that.
Ugh.
Kay, I have been doing a great dance. I think I've given somebody some good information during it. Please don't worry about it, Kay. Technology is the way it is. Just pick off on ghost kitchens and start telling us about ghost kitchens. Oh, you're on mute. It muted you again automatically. Yep. The
I was like,
automatic.
it's one of those days, right? So, yeah, but you have ghost kitchens and then you have dark kitchens too, which that means that you're using the space during the time that they're closed, but you have your own signage. And so going to like bakers and like even us with our like storefront, we plan on being a ghost kitchen for others went during our closed hours, and possibly even a dark kitchen. We're looking for like actually a coffee person right now, if that's something that they would want to do in the morning hours when we're not open. But I think a lot of it is about collaboration and finding other people who have similar services to you, but don't use their space or their resources the whole time. So how can you really like use those resources to the best of your abilities for both businesses in order to help mitigate cost, especially in LA, because it is so expensive to do business here.
It's interesting. A whole industry, these ghost and dark kitchens, has come up from the rulings that the government has. So this whole industry is trying to help companies share this space, which is really makes sense. Now, Kay, I could be completely wrong on this, but I could have swore that somebody was talking that the ghost kitchen also helped them deliver their product or market their product. So are there some, can you talk about that? Because somebody said, hey, I have a storefront, but I use a ghost kitchen. So I also have a storefront over here that then they can, deliver, and I can increase my marketplace without expanding. And I said enough of it to explain it, but can you give more details to someone that might want to take advantage of that type of situation?
Yeah, there's different types of kitchens that you can use. So there's different types of commissary kitchens that have additional services like marketing and delivery and things like that. A lot of those places use things like DoorDash, but they help with like understanding that platform and making sure that it allows you to do what you need to do. A lot of bigger restaurants tend to do that. With these smaller ghost kitchens, but they're very expensive. So you just have to be very cautious about what does that come with. And then also understanding what your business like what your purpose is, right? Is it important for you to have a storefront? Do you need that visibility? Or can you just use a ghost kitchen, which allows you to mitigate the cost, but you don't need to have an actual storefront, which for some people, that's a lot less expensive. And it allows other people. So at the first kitchen we were at, we would make our product. I would leave it in the refrigerator, and then the bakery would actually give it to our clients. So we didn't have to, and we paid a little bit extra. So they would give our deliveries to clients, but it also helped them because our clients were coming in to pick up stuff and then in turn ordering things from them, whether it was a coffee or a cupcake or a cookie, something like that. They were able to also make sales as well.
Got it. So it sounds like wherever you are financially, or unless you're, really, really just starting out, there's maybe a answer, a solution somewhere within these communities with someone that owns a kitchen that will rent out some of your space. If you do your homework and really pursue and keep your eyes open and ask and do research, you can find some kind of situation that will work with you here and then kind of grow with you into different situations. Now, with the ghost kitchen, do you still have to get your own permits? Because I know permitting is a big issue for people. How do the permits work when you're using these third party?
So it depends on the location. So in Pasadena, you need to get your own permit. In
Okay.
LA, they have the ability where you don't need to get your own permit and you can use somebody else's liability and they can take you on. My suggestion is not to do that because it's just not fair for you or the person. Um, in some circumstances, it may make sense. Like if we used to have somebody who came in and dipped our strawberries for us. Like that's a little bit different. You know what I mean? Where I'm taking on her liability. I know how the strawberries have been washed and things like that. So it really depends on to what extent your business is.
When you got started in this, Kay, did you think that so much of your time and energy would be towards all of this regulations? It sounds to me like you're spending massive amounts of time figuring all this out, and then you get to figure out, should we serve strawberries that are dipped? But that's like at the last thought during all this. Is this quite a lot? And you didn't know any of this at the beginning, did you?
No, I hate it. Like, but I think that's part of the reason that I focus so heavily on mentoring and making sure that I'm giving this information to other people. I found a lot of gatekeeping when I started. Like, I worked really hard to figure out all of these things, so I don't want to tell you how I did it. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll figure it out on my own. But like, the reality is, like, a lot of the things that we've done, like, a lot of the things that we've learned is because we did things incorrectly. And that costs money, that takes time. And for me as a woman owned business, as a mom, as a minority, I'm not going to do that to other people. So like I've always been an open book of like, ask me all the questions so I can tell you all of the things. And there's a lot of stress in being an entrepreneur. There's a reason it's called solopreneurs. And I don't want to push that onto other people. And I think it's an issue that we don't talk a lot about either, is like the stress that comes with owning a business, let alone needing to know all of the regulations in order to literally give you some cheese on a board. Like,
How do you deal? And this show, I love to talk about the stress on it, just because everybody is experiencing it, and I think it needs to be talked about more. So talk to us about the stress and how you deal with it and what you've learned over the time period in dealing with it.
so this is where like my story kind of pivots again. So I'm actually in the process, like a 90-day process of finding a manager to come in. If there's anybody watching that wants to be a manager, we're looking for a manager to help manage catering and our storefront. So I don't have to worry about the day-to-day operations. And I can really focus on mentoring and stress management, like retreats. And I think that I've learned for myself kind of to practice the 3 C's: to calm, to create, and then to connect. And with that, that means I need to take a second to breathe. When it comes to create means like I need to do my creative. I need to play. I need to play with my kids. I need to be excited about all of those things. And then the last thing is connecting with other people. And even yourself, right? And figuring out what really helps you move forward to do the things that you love. I think the reason we all become entrepreneurs is because we don't want to work 24/7. And then we get into this hustle mentality, especially in the US, where we have to hustle and we have to work. And we kind of get these badges of honor for burnout. And it's like, that shouldn't be a badge of honor anymore. And so I'm kind of moving into a space of like, there's no reason to stress. Let's figure out how to put your business in a space that allows you to stress less. Let's figure out all of the things that, take, it took me years to figure out, right? Here, it's on a sheet. Let's go through it. And then let's talk about how we really add quality to life. Because that's the reason we became entrepreneurs, not not for the other things. Money's great and all of that stuff, but if you don't have the time or the energy to spend the money, then what's the point in having it, right? And so I think it's really important to take a second for yourself to have days where it is strictly about reconnecting, remembering what your passion is. And it took me a while to figure that out. I think I was on another panel and somebody said, "Why are you so passionate about this?" And I was like, "I'm not." Literally, this is not my passion. It pays the bills. I absolutely love it. I love to make other people feel taken care of, right? So that's what my passion is. And so of course I built STEMs and it's great and it's doing really well. So we're gonna keep it. And I'm very happy being the CEO, but I don't want to do day-to-day operations anymore. I want to give back to our community and make sure that nobody else feels the stresses of being like a solopreneur and doing it by yourself. You have community around you, and it's really about taking that moment to breathe, taking that moment to create what you love doing, and taking another moment to connect with not only yourself, but the people around you.
Hey, that is so beautiful. Everything you just said, and it's the message that I always want to tell the audience. I say it's really we've reached a time in our development, whatever you want to call it, in our community, our society, in our world, where I think it's time to get back to what really matters and stop chasing these dreams that maybe aren't ours. Now, I'm not against any dream, but I think so many of us get sold at such a young age on what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to be, where we're supposed to make it. And I spent my entire life, many decades, doing something that I suddenly realized when I was living in LA. I haven't been there for a long time. I remember driving one day and being so engaged in everything. And then I said, I don't even want the big house on the hill. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I want to be happy. I want to be engaged and I want to enjoy. And Kay, first of all, I'm going to have you back on so we get more time to talk. But secondly, I just really, from our conversation, I bet you that you're going to come on the show someday and you're going to be talking about your mentorship program only, your entrepreneurship, support program, because you have such a way of communicating not only the technical aspects of running a company, but also what it means to be the human being, the spiritual being that's engaged as an entrepreneur and a solopreneur. So I really appreciate it. Now, I had this in back of my head. I was like, no matter what, Lori, don't forget to ask Kay this so the audience, otherwise I would have let the audience down. In those that want to ask more questions, get exposed to your mentoring, your videos. I know Lauren's been posting stuff in the chat. I just want to make sure we tell the audience where to go to get more inspiration and information from Kay. So I want to make sure that's been put in the chat. What's the one place that they can go to hear more of your videos that you speak about these topics?
So I actually just launched my personal brand on Monday and I didn't plan on it. It just kind of happened. And so my Instagram is Kaiy Smith-Biesman. And you can just follow me there. And we're working on the website this week because it was kind of like I had a moment of like clarity and I was like, I'm just gonna put it out there. And my team's like, wait, we don't have things in place yet. Like you can't just push things out. And I'm like, I did it. And you send me messages there or even go onto our Instagram on STEMs. I'm super responsive. Like you ever have questions about like licensing and how things work, like I'm not that person who's going to be like, figure it out yourself. I'm going to tell you what I know, or who I think you should contact in order to figure out the right steps in order to move forward.
Beautiful. I just know that your true pathway, you're just starting to discover. I can tell, I know it, I can feel it, and it is something that is going to benefit you and everybody around you. I just absolutely know that.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I got a couple minutes left. You've given so much, but any last words to the audience? Anything that you want to leave the audience to know? We got a couple minutes yet, so please take your time. Any final last words?
I think one of the things that I've learned in my journey is that it's okay to like put your phone down and take a second for yourself. And it's really important to say no to things that just don't give you like that passion, that don't make you feel good, and to trust your gut. Like, you know, whether or not like you're going in the right direction. I get that question all the time. Like, how do I know I'm doing the right things? And it's like, how does it feel? How do you
Yeah.
feel in your gut? You truly deep down inside know. And I think just trusting that instinct is really important.
I fully agree. I fully agree. And sometimes I have to sit down and I have to have a conversation with myself and I just got to go, Lori, honey, whenever I talk to myself, I call myself honey. What's going on? Am I making the right decisions for you? Is there something I should be aware of? Is there something you're not liking? Is there something you are liking? I have these all the time and it just really helps me to reconnect. And that's something I notice with you very much, Kay. You're very grounded. You've got clarity, you got stability. And we don't find that when we're just constantly go, 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 go.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah,
come to us. Well, you've got to
exactly.
already promise to come back on, Kay, because we did not get enough time to delve into everything. So I'm already telling you, you're going to have to come back on and we're going to have to continue this conversation. But for today, I really thank you for everything you shared. It's just been such an inspirational conversation. So Lauren, I'm going to bring you back to help close this down. Was this not another amazing show?
Yeah, I mean, per usual, for sure. You had me at, completely pivoting and switching gears in, in your studies. I think I was pre-med initially, and I marketing. Marketing is what I do. You know what I mean? That's my passion. And I saw several people in the chat, with similar stories. Kay, if you do have a chance, please be sure to just check in there and see. Brenda says, calm, create, connect. Love it. Like, you just saying those three things was perfect, especially for, entrepreneurs or any of those that are just, working in corporate. Like it's what you have to do. And it's what you just described, Lori. This is a really great show. And Kay has beautiful photos. I don't know. I'm like a charcuterie connoisseur. You guys definitely have to take a look at her offerings. And I put that in the chat again.
Well, thanks again. And Lauren, aren't we the two luckiest that we get to have this show every week?
For sure.
And it's like every Wednesday, by the time I get to Wednesday, I'm like, I'm so tired. And then I think, oh, I gotta, do the show. And then after the show, I'm like, oh my God, what do I gotta do? I
It's
can do
time to
anything.
go.
I get inspired by my own inspirational show. So how's that, right? That's a good thing. So Kay, I'm going to shoot you an email. We're going to get you back on to continue this.
For
And
sure.
things I have to mention before we go. I think this is such a great lesson, and I thought about this so often. Did you see that Kay got booted out, and none of us responded in any stressed out way? I think she froze it again. No, she's there. So
Nope.
it's a statement to our audience. Let's just go with the flow. Did you notice how she got booted out? She came on, Lauren and I talked, she came back on, and all was good.
Yep.
Let's stop trying to be perfect.
Yep.
That's what I want to say. So I'm going to end this
Yep.
with, let's stop trying to be perfect. Let's do our best and let's accept whatever happens. Go with the flow, pivot, experience life, and enjoy it, guys. And be
There
a
it is.
solopreneur within a community, and let's be a community strong, because together we can do anything. We can do anything. So, Kay, it was a pure delight. Lauren's going to stay behind, make sure everybody has the contact information, how to get in touch with me, sign up for webinars or anything you need. She always stays behind and makes sure everything's good. I'm going to sign out, but I'm not before I say thank you so much to Kay to be on. Thank you for our frequent flyers for being here every week. And if you're new, thank you for joining Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams, and I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lori. Thank you. Bye, Kay. Thanks so much for joining us. Cindy, you know what? Yes, it is hard to see failures as temporary, but that's exactly what they are, right? We bounce back. Thanks so much for all of you just joining us. The show was amazing per usual, but it's not amazing unless we have all of you. So we hope to see you again next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Small Biz Talk, Solutions for Your Small Business. Take care, everybody. Bye.